So today we have Scott Spivey's sister, Jennifer Spivey Foley, and we have Scott's mom, Deborah Spivey, with us as well. And today we're going to talk about his case and where we're at with that. And the first thing we want to do is talk about who Scott was, because we haven't gotten a full picture of that. I feel like there's other voices that have been maybe louder, and especially in the last month and a half, trying to put out a narrative about who he was as if that justifies what happened to him. But at the same time, it's from what we've heard in talking to friends of Scott, completely not accurate.
When he came back home after college, he really wanted to help coach. And so he got involved with some rec league teams, Dixie youth teams, and he found a bunch of boys that had a lot of talent. They just didn't have ways to get to practice or didn't have gloves or cleats. And so he kind of took them in and he created a travel ball team with them. And they were good. And then they went all around the Carolinas playing baseball. Would make scouting tapes for him and send them to scouts. One of Scott's boys, we call them Scott's boys because they were like his little children. Like I feel like they're my little nieces and nephews because they come and see us all the time. But one of them, ended up playing baseball at UNCP, University of at Pembroke, and the other one's getting a business major at the community college. He loved being with kids. He knew the importance of sports and that the kids had to have an outlet. He didn't want money, like gloves, a ride, anything like that to be the reason why a kid couldn't be involved in something. And so, he would drive 25 minutes to go pick a youngin' up and then bring him to practice. They would be piling out of his truck. He'd have a ton of them in his truck, and they would just come piling out. And if they had a game early the next morning, they'd all just spend the night with him in his house. And they would have a little sleepover in the living room, and then they'd get up early and then go to their game. So he was loyal. If he loved you hard, and he would be there night or day. It didn't matter if you were going through something, he would show up. He would go over to his friend's house, and they had a little girl, and he would play with her like he played with my kids.
Aww. One of his friends said they would miss him dropping in because he'd drop in uninvited. You didn't have to wait. He didn't wait for an invitation. He would drop in. And one of his friends told me when Scott had died, he says, I was in a dark place once, and I called Scott, and I told him about it. He says, I'll be there as soon as I can. And it took Scott about 5 hours, but he went straight to him, he says, and he stayed with me while I was in that dark time. So he did. If he loved you, he would do anything for you.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of friend he was.
And I think that's very evident on social media now. You can't see anything talking about Scott without one of his very loyal best friends standing up for him and saying what a great person he was. We've been overflooded with messages of people who knew him in different ways, and you can always tell when a person's really special, and it seemed like Scott was a really, really special person from just all of the people who fiercely loved him and are now wanting to fight for him.
And Scott had a strong sense of right and wrong. If he felt that something was not right or unjust, he would
very passionate about it.
Or the night that you found out he died, do you want to walk us a little bit through that and sort of how that went and when you started to feel like maybe not everything was above board here?
Around 8:45, I was getting my babies out of the bathtub, and his best friend calls me and says, what's going on with Scott? And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean what's going on with Scott? Because I just heard something's happened at Camp Swamp. I don't know the details. And I was like, Christian, yes you do. Tell me what's going on. And he made me put my husband on the phone, and I just put PJs on my babies. We got in my husband's truck, threw my youngins at my mother-in-law, and just went. And I called Mama, and Mama was like, I was like, Mama, something's happened to Scott just down there at Camp Swamp. She said, I saw it on Facebook. Someone's been killed. And it was just like,
no,
it can't be. Like, this cannot be us. Like, and My uncle drove my mom and my dad down there, and they were on one side of the crime scene, and I was on the other. Then eventually, the lieutenant that was on, walks over and is like,
Finally let us through.
finally let my mom and dad come to where me and my husband and my cousin and her husband had showed up. And he walks over and he was like, I'm sorry to tell you about that. Your son's deceased and a product of a road rage incident. Never told us where he went, never told us how his body was taken away. It was just, you'll need to get in touch with the coroner's office to get his body. I didn't even think to ask.
Because we've never had to deal with anything being remotely like that.
But when you think about what happens to, like in car accidents and stuff, you have a medical service of some kind that transports the body. And, it was a week before we found out. A week. And Horry County Police Department never told us that they towed him in the truck. Never.
And we never received a phone call from the police department notifying us that there was an accident or that he was involved in it. Only on the scene, almost 3 hours after the incident taken place, did we find out any information. And it just began to not feel right.
It didn't feel right. And I remember laying in they wouldn't give us any details at all. And so I laid in the bed all night looking at Jaber Belong's webpage to see if those two boys were going to be booked. And they never showed up. And then I was like, the next morning, I was like, something's not right. We were grieving, and that's what we did. I love my brother. And so I put a post up that I love my brother. Here's some pictures of him. This is how I remember him. This is who he is. I don't know what happened on that road because I wasn't there. But I know who he was. And I'm going to celebrate who he was to me. Because we were not coming out demonizing Scott and condemning what he did, they were like, we're going to file a defamation suit against y'all. In less than 24 hours, the shooter has said to his parents, I want to file a defamation suit because the family's not owning up to anything Scott did. I didn't know what Scott did. We didn't even freaking talk to a police officer.
Yeah.
I don't know any of the facts. All I can do is grieve my brother. I have nothing to defend. It's hard to defend something when you don't know what's going on.
My heart was broken. And the more they alluded to Scott having his character being assassinated, that made the grieving even harder because I know the man that I loved, the young man, the boy I gave birth to, and the young man that I watched grow up. Yeah, he's not a perfect man, but I know the character he had, and it was heartbreaking. That's all I can say. It was just heartbreaking.
No one should go through what you guys have had to go through, just even in terms of just getting basic answers. The idea of you guys standing at the scene of his death, and especially now that we've seen what the inner workings look like, and this lieutenant's being told not to tell you guys anything. No matter what the facts of the case were at that time, you're a family who has lost somebody and who loved somebody, and regardless of the shooter and who he was and his relationship with law enforcement, it's really hard for me to understand how anyone could treat a grieving family like that in the moment, no matter how they might have regarded the facts of the case at the time. Or to me, it just speaks very heavily of the fact that they were immediately trying to demonize Scott and were therefore taking that humanity away from you guys as well, all in service of, the shooter. So I do think that hopefully, what you've been exposing here will lead to meaningful change. I'm very cynical about it, but at the same time, how can you go back when you see these things?